Coming up on The Disturbance, I've got my big AFC West National Football League preview show. I am so excited to talk about Russell Wilson in Denver. How about Devante Adams, maybe the biggest defector of them all to leave Aaron Rodgers in the offseason, is now a Las Vegas Raider. I also will get deep into what is the best team on paper in the division, thanks to their general manager in Los Angeles. That's right, the Los Angeles Chargers, and their general manager, Tom Telesco, who's in his 10th year as the GM of the Los Angeles Chargers, has done nothing but put together an absolutely spectacular roster on paper. We will also talk about Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and a bunch of other people that are going to be showing up in Kansas City uniforms this season. And you know that at some point during the season, Andy Reid, really one of the best coaches in the National Football League, is going to have them looking like serious contenders, even if you can't name more than 4 people on their defense. I've got all of that, and trust me, a whole lot more coming up on the big show today.
Live and on tape from the heart of Silicon Valley, this is The Disturbance, hosted by Dave Daba. Now to the host, who can't stop ripping on players, coaches, and unbelievably bad front office management, Dave Daba.
It is super late night on a Wednesday, June 27th of the year 2022. I'm Dave Daba, and thanks so much for tuning into The Disturbance today. Big show for you, all about the AFC West. I will give you my predictions on who I think is going to win the division. I thought we'd start off by saying that all 4 of these teams, the Raiders, the Broncos, the Chargers, and of course the Chiefs of Kansas City, all have a legitimate playoff berth potentials, all have legitimate opportunities to get on a run and find a way to make it into a Super Bowl and even win a Super Bowl in this upcoming year. This is the only division in football that, at least entering the season, on paper, all 4 of these teams are legit Super Bowl contenders, even the Denver Broncos. Because when you look at who the Denver Broncos actually have on the defensive side of the ball still, and then you look at the offensive weapons, that is, if Jerry Jeudy can stay out of jail, then you believe that even the Broncos, who are probably the weakest of the 4 teams in the division, could certainly go on the run with Ciara's husband, Russell Wilson, who is now a proud member of the Denver Broncos. Okay, so we're going to get into the Broncos in just a little bit. But first, I thought I would start with the Los Angeles Chargers. That's right, the Los Angeles Chargers. And this is the team that on paper should absolutely win this division. Now, Tom Telesco, who I mentioned earlier, is the general manager of this particular football team. Now, as I take a look down, he went out and he got Khalil Mack. He's got Derwin James. He's got J.C. Jackson now on this team as well. Just a huge pickup after pickup on the defensive side of the ball. And not to mention, there's still this other guy on this defensive side of the ball. It's a Bosa. It is Joey Bosa. So this Los Angeles Charger team is super talented. Now, when I think about this Los Angeles Charger team that went 9-8 last year, and don't worry, I promise we're going to give a lot of love to Justin Herbert in just a bit. But I have to start with their head coach last year, who went 9-8 as a rookie head coach in the National Football League. Now, of course, he was handed a Ferrari to run his offense at quarterback in one Justin Herbert. And the problem with Brandon Staley is this. He made bad decision after bad decision sort of throughout the season and continued to make them as the season went on. If there is one reason that Los Angeles Charger team didn't make the playoffs last year, if there's anybody that you could actually blame, it would have to be the head coach of this Los Angeles Charger team. Despite all of that, I still think he did a great job as a rookie head coach in the National Football League. Now, as you all know, I'm a big Minnesota Viking fan, and we covered the NFC North last week, and in which I went on to talk about Kevin William O'Connell, KWO, the new head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. And one of the primary reasons I was skeptical about the Vikings actually winning the division and making that prediction was the fact that they have a rookie head coach running their team in this upcoming season. And a big part of that was actually taking a look at the rookie mistakes that Brandon Staley made. And the problem was he didn't just make them at the beginning of the year, because who really cares what happens in September and October? But when you're inching towards a playoff berth, you've got to make the right decisions down the stretch. Brandon Staley definitely struggled with it. I think he's a great young coach. I think he'll get it right this year, which is why I am actually taking the Chargers to win this entire division. We talked a little bit about the defensive side of the ball. We could talk and we could gush over the arm of Justin Herbert. I could brag about how I predicted Justin Herbert was the best quarterback that came out the year he came out into the National Football League. I can talk about all sorts of great things around Justin Herbert. The only thing I would say is just cut down on the mistakes and cut down on the fumbles. And if he can do that, I think he'll be fine and continue to grow and build his legend in the National Football League. But the only way to have a real legend in the National Football League is to actually make a playoff run. Look, Dan Marino didn't win a Super Bowl, but he was in the playoffs a lot, Justin. So on the offensive side of the ball, we also know that they have Austin Eckler there, who is a fantastic running back. If he can stay healthy, Austin Eckler, who was completely overlooked by the entire National Football League before he became a star in the National Football League. It's amazing to me how thousands of scouts covering thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of footage and minutes can miss a guy like Austin Eckler and let him slip into somebody else's team and actually become a star in the National Football League. Mike Williams, their star wide receiver, got a huge contract, a 3-year deal worth $60 million. And of course, Keenan Allen, who's probably now a little bit underpaid, is their other star wide receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, on the side note, there is one distraction that could pop up as this season goes on, and that is that the owner, Dean Spanos, is actually being sued and accused of misogynistic behavior as the legal battle continues between the Spanos children over who's in control of this Los Angeles Charger team. All right, let's move on to the second most intriguing team in the AFC West entering the season. It can't be the Kansas City Chiefs. It just simply can't. It's not the Denver Broncos. And so we'll get into both of those teams in just a little bit, but it has to be the Las Vegas Raiders. And when you look at what Rich Bisaccia did last year with this Las Vegas Raider team after the John Gruden incidents happened, and Bisaccia took over as the head coach. And then, of course, we had the Henry Ruggs III wide receiver incident where he killed somebody driving 156 miles an hour. He killed a lady and a dog in that accident in Las Vegas in a neighborhood. 156 miles an hour. Just crazy. So the Raiders certainly, who are accustomed to traditionally off the field issues, had a major one there, not only with their head coach, but also with an up and coming star receiver that they had to flat out just cut. That being said, Bisaccia did such a good job with this team that I almost felt like it was a mistake, an unjustified mistake, to not give Bisaccia at least one more year to prove that he could be a head coach in this National Football League. Because when you look at the job he did down the stretch with this Raider team, then you really have to give it to him. He won the last 4 games of the regular season, so they ended up with a 10-7 record last year, and then went on to lose to the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs. Mind you, the Raiders were in the playoffs, not the Chargers. The Chargers head coach is going to be much better this year, and Bisaccia would have continued to grow as a head coach. Instead, they made the move to Josh McDaniels. Now, Josh, as we know, is of New England Patriot fame and also was the head coach for a couple years with the Denver Broncos. He had a really good first season with the Denver Broncos. If you go back 10 or 11 years, the second season wasn't so good, was it? So Josh McDaniels finally accepts a second chance in the National Football League. And the people in Indianapolis would love nothing more than to see Josh McDaniels fail. That's not going to happen. I'm not really sure, how great this Raiders secondary is. But I do know that they picked up Chandler Jones and they have Max Crosby. And when the game is on the line, you just watch. One of those guys is going to be there with 3 to 5 minutes to go in a game and is going to be causing havoc, and it's going to give the Raiders a chance to win. This Raider team, though, is still loaded with a lot of offensive weapons. The biggest defector, if you will, from the Green Bay Packers, and there were all sorts of defectors from the Green Bay Packers this year. And I still picked the Packers to win the division, but it wasn't by much, was it? And one of the reasons was they had a bunch of people abandon ship with this Raider team. We're going to cover 3 of them in throughout the rest of this particular episode of The Disturbance. The biggest defector of them all was Davante Adams, who decided to return to return to a place with his former college quarterback Derek Carr. They both went to college at Fresno State, and nothing spells Las Vegas Raider quarterback and wide receiver tandem like Fresno State does it. Look, a quarterback from Yale, a quarterback from Notre Dame, a quarterback from Alabama just doesn't fit with the Las Vegas Raiders lifestyle, does it? But when you get Derek Carr and Davante Adams out of Fresno State, the Fresno State Bulldogs, it just seems to make sense for so many reasons. That being said, Davante Adams is an absolutely fantastic wide receiver. He's still in that period where he's sort of at the peak of his career, hasn't started to slide down the backside of career mountain yet. And that, of course, is a good thing. Look, this is a strong offensive line with this Raider team. Josh Jacobs is coming back. The big issue with Josh Jacobs isn't that he's not a potentially, top 5 running back in the National Football League. He can do it all. He's also a very good pass receiver out of the backfield. Love Josh Jacobs. The problem last season, of course, was injuries. So if Josh Jacobs can stay healthy, then that will be a good thing for this Raider team. Look, this Raider team is pretty deep on the offensive side of the ball. There's lots of other players on that team that are going to be able to step up. But don't talk about the Raiders secondary at this point. One last note on the Raiders, and somebody that deserves to be mentioned that I haven't mentioned, which is Hunter Renfro, who did also sign a nice deal with the Raiders. And if you forget, Hunter Renfro last season had over 1,000 yards in receiving yards for 103 actual receptions. You probably had no idea how good Hunter Renfro was. Hunter Renfro is not a deep threat at all, but Hunter Renfro is a possession wide receiver that's not afraid to run across the middle, that runs extraordinarily good patterns, and it is somebody that Derek Carr absolutely trusts. Lots of other weapons on this team. Not enough time to mention them all, but Hunter Renfro secured himself a 2-year deal worth $31 million to come back to the Raiders. Speaking of defectors, the new head coach of your Denver Broncos, Nathaniel Hackett, has taken over from Vic Fangio as the head coach of the Denver Broncos. Good old Vic Fangio. Look, I thought Vic always did a decent job as a head coach in the National Football League. If your desire was to have a good defense, keep the scores low, and have a chance at winning just about every game and rarely get blown out, Vic Fangio is your guy. If only Vic Fangio would have found somebody better than Pat Shurmur to be his offensive coordinator, Vic Fangio might actually still have his gig as a head coach in the National Football League. That is fact. That is absolute fact for you. But like when you look at it, and you think about it, right? I mean, really, how good of an upgrade is Russell Wilson over a Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock? I mean, really, like how good of an upgrade is that? It's a huge upgrade, right? So without getting into all of the, how great Russell Wilson can be as a quarterback in the National Football League, much like Baker Mayfield, Russell Wilson played hurt a lot last season. And so the numbers were certainly down, but a lot of respect to Russell Wilson and how he at least attempted to finish up the season. Look, on the defensive side of the ball, they picked up Randy Gregory. It's a nice pickup for this team. Probably get you, 4 to 5 sacks in a season. And then Patrick Surtain II, better known as PS2, had an absolutely fantastic rookie season last year with this Denver Bronco team. They will get even better, potentially better, even though they had some people walk in the offseason. On the offensive side of the ball, Javonte Williams rushed for 903 yards on 7.3 yards per carry. That is a mind-boggling number. So hopefully I read those stats right. But Javonte Williams is a heck of a running back for this particular team. He has a lot of patience, and he makes a lot of really good decisions on the football field. Like when you're watching a football game and you're at home and you're on TV and you get that view from the running back's point of view, and you see the running back running towards a wall, and you're always like, why? You see the hole to the left, you see the hole to the right, and like the really great running backs see those things and choose to make alternative pass down the field versus what the play actually called for. That is actually something that Javonte Williams is extraordinarily good at. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch him play. Don't forget, they also have Melvin Gordon. And I think Russell Wilson is really going to look at a Javonte Williams. And at some point, there's going to be the question about Beast Mode 2.0. It's going to happen. It is absolutely going to happen when Russell Wilson's talking about Javonte Williams if he keeps things up the way he did in the second half of the season last year. And then, of course, on the wide receiver side, just a ton of talent there. Cortland Sutton is coming back from injury, which should be a good thing. And we all know how good Jerry Jeudy can be. That is, if he can stay out of jail. Jail Jeudy is some potential, but I think that case is not going to keep him off the field, at least all indications at this point. I'm not going to get into his personal police blotter story on today's show, but the Broncos are a good team. This is a team that could go like 7-9, and it's also a team that could easily win 12 games next season and make a serious Super Bowl playoff run. I mean, that's how good this offensive side of the ball is, and once again, this is just a solid defense that has gotten better, and we haven't even gotten into their draft picks as well. Finally, in the AFC West this season, look, okay, so let's just get this straight. Andy Reid is a hell of a head coach, isn't he? He really is. Just that, you know, yes, I know they blew it at home against Cincinnati, which is something nobody should ever repeat. But they blew it at home in the AFC Championship game against Cincinnati. They lost that game 27-24. And you know, Patrick Mahomes just seemed a little bit off, especially in the first half of that game. So when I look at this and I think about what has happened with this Kansas City Chiefs team during the offseason, the thing that, you know, first of all, you know, Joe Burrow, way off Broadway, Joe Burrow went into Kansas City and took down Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs so that they could go to the Super Bowl. It's just like every time I think about that, I keep sort of thinking of like Joe Namath and his big fur coat, and you can absolutely see, because Joe Burrow has that kind of swagger. You can absolutely see Joe Burrow pulling something like that off at some point during his career. On a side note, Joe Burrow earlier in the day had his appendix out. Everything appears to has gone right in that. And one last note, because I don't want the PETA people coming after us here at all. If Joe Burrow's wearing a fur coat, I would hope it was fake fur. All right. So Andy Reid's is just a hell of a coach. I mentioned this in the opener. Like you're not even going to be able to name 4 or 5 players on the defensive side of the ball at some point during this season. They lost. You know, Tyrann Mathieu in free agency, which to me isn't as big a deal as a lot of people are making it out to be, because he's really sort of towards the end of his career. They did sign safety Justin Reid, which was definitely a good signing. On the wide receiver side of the fence, you know, a fantastic signing of Juju Smith-Schuster if it was 2 years ago, and wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling was also taken with this Kansas City Chiefs team. Now to the main story of the Kansas City Chiefs offseason. And when I saw this deal go down, I was in utter shock. And I'm still in utter shock months later. You allowed the cheetah to slip out of town and go all the way to Miami. Now, look, I'm not saying the cheetah is going to be successful in Miami in the same way the cheetah was successful in Kansas City. But when you think about it, what kind of leading man doesn't have a great support cast around him? And Tyrick Hill, Patrick Mahomes being the leading man, and Travis Kelce, and you know the running game made up of Allure and a couple other really good young running backs will handle that part of it. But to allow this cheetah to simply dash out the door and for you to make a trade, sending really one of the most prolific wide receivers of all time out the door. I have never seen a wide receiver play the way Tyrick Hill plays. Now, look, I know there's some off the field stuff, and I know there's some other things that probably went on. But man, I mean, look, Jerry Rice was great. Jerry Rice was absolutely fantastic. Not even trying to say that Tyrick Hill belongs in the Jerry Rice sentence yet. But just like for pure enjoyment, for watching a guy who could catch a 5-yard bubble screen and take it to the house and never get touched while zigzagging across the field. I mean, not just going in a straight line, but bypassing people. Let's say he started off on the left, he'd end up on the right side of the end zone. Tyrick Hill's an absolutely amazing athlete. Forget about the off the field stuff for a second. Just on the field, this is really going to hurt this particular football team. Now, Patrick Mahomes is such a great quarterback that he will make it work with Juju Smith-Schuster, who signed like a $10 million plus 1-year deal, as well as Marquez Valdez-Scantling that signed a 3-year, $30 million deal. The real hope on the Cheetah leaving town piece is on the shoulders of a rookie wide receiver, which in general is a bad idea, except for the fact that this is Patrick Mahomes and this is Andy Reid as the head coach of this particular football team. If anybody could come in and take some of that burden off, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes will find a way to make Sky Moore a fantastic wide receiver in his rookie season at some point in the National Football League. Not saying he's going to have 1,000 yards receiving this year. They don't need him to. But if they can get Sky up and running within, by November, 750 plus yards receiving, 70 plus catches, and a clear indication that this guy is going to be one of the best wide receivers in the game, which he certainly has the talent to be. Then at that point, I will get off of my Cheetah rant. As for the Cheetah himself, Tyrick Hill is going to get into a couple games. It's going to take 3 or 4 games, and there's going to be some shot put passes by Tua, who I was completely wrong about, admittedly. And at some point is going to absolutely regret not being with Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and the rest of the gang in Kansas City. So, to recap super quick, Chargers are going to win the division. Second or third place is somewhere between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders. I think the Broncos will finish last in this division, and quite frankly, all 4 teams could find a way to sneak into the playoffs. That is how good this division is. And the problem on what I just said is they are going to beat each other up. So it is unlikely that all 4 teams will make it because they have to play each other throughout the season. Anyways, there you go. I want to thank everybody so much for tuning into the big AFC West National Football League 2022-23 preview and prediction show for The Disturbance. I'm Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing week.
The Disturbance is brought to you live and on tape from the heart of the Silicon Valley and is a production of the Mighty Rip Podcast Network. For more witty, 100% independent NFL and NBA sports coverage, check out our big sports website at disturbance.live.